Ke tau ai, te Māori tū. Ke tau ai, te Māori ora. Ki te katoa. Haumi ai, hui ai, mai ai. Welcome to everyone, and we've got a full agenda today. And we can start off with our parking management, which is at 10 a.m. Hey, okay.
We have planning manager for transport.
And then my colleague who sometimes
Jeremy Martin, the senior network engineer.
we've been involved as a community board with the parking management strategy for a couple of years now, so we're very excited to see it to this stage. So this is a very important road for us, in particular because it's on our work plan as being one of our priorities as well. There are about 10 others and seeing this particular piece of work through. I will throw it open to you, but I personally commend the depth that has gone into that strategy document, 140 odd pages, which I'll read most of them. I didn't read the Franklin and Wānaka-Upper ones, but I read the 2/3 of the rest and thought it was, I thought there was a real richness there. And it's a very complex issue, and I think that reflected in the depth of the information that was there. Others will have obviously feedback and insight. That's just me leading as the chair. We'll throw it over to you. We want to make sure that we get through the presentation, but also, as important as you know, have plenty of time for discussion and feedback. Or is yours, Tony?
Thank you very much. And yeah, let's just go through a few slides background. We have to get a lot of background information and map with you, understand you may want to go through some of that. What I want to do for the whole of the time we've been allocated is talk through some of that mapping. Just talk through some of the major issues about it. Is the generally is the time like for. Okay, comprehensive parking management plan has been around a couple of years. Resourcing wise, we've been limited to what we can put into this work. So it is something which has taken has spanned 2 or 3 years already. As we move through it though, really want to get to a couple of things today. How far we've got, progress made has been substantial. 7 time frame expectations for the board here are really important. This is a notable subject, complex subject, and making sure that we talk enough and detailed enough to go into it. Sense check of the parking changes. Do we keep the right balance? We've heard lots of different opinions on a huge scale, but it's trying to find that balance and really giving the board the opportunity again to look at the planning prior to moving through the other council procedure. We do have Wānaka Town Centre, we do have elements of Frampton, and we do have Clutha Town Centre to manage at the same time. Individually, talk a little bit about what are progress to date. Comprehensive parking management plan. We needed to understand what we were doing. The work came to us identified through the policy statement. So the development should do this to manage their parking. So we came up with our parking strategy, how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it. We then looked at how we actually form complex management plans in areas and extended that into guidelines so that we need to set up more for different areas, expand the ones we've got, to look background to create more plan. Concentrated on our 3 big parking areas where we have issues, Queensland Town Centre, Frankfurt, Wānaka, and we're leaving ourselves open to tactical. We have taken this through a number of sense checks with a number of people, our MPM particularly, very keen that we work much on the background of the implementation, how we make all this happen, actually in the council, rather than just put the plan on the table and say that's what we decided. It's how do all these processes actually happen through council. We might identify in a minute something like 18 different teams across parking. It's quite complex trying to get it. transport functions, at the same change across a number of teams. But for the purpose of putting this work together, we've made the assumption we are the owners, managers, we are a planning team, not managing parking, it's not our core business. To put one person in charge or a team in charge just makes sense. You can imagine all the development, all the change, how parking is involved. There's no month that needs to stay static in any of the areas. How we approach it is to identify not just different towns, different centres, different zones within a town, and then heading into the different types of uses, user groups, and then try to balance it together with industry, recognised schools. Next steps, we have a timeline here. Again, we do need to spend a little bit of time on this. Community board working on today, council workshop changed 24th of March, 31st. Council meeting booked in for the 7th of May. What we're looking for there, for the full council meeting, is approval to go around to public to resolve. What we get the timing right, what we get the level of information right, where and what. Also really important to understand is how close we are to implementation. At the moment, we don't have any budgets. Not to go in this period, we have a shared budget with other projects. As we go through here, I hopefully explain that a lot of this is tied in with more technology, more resources. Unless we can put all of those together, we will be limited to actually check to do the next bit. It may be that we are next LTP and talking here about staging. This staging could be first, second, and third year of an LTP plan, or it could be the next LTP. And that one thing gets south phase. When do we like it? What's different from what we've done before is that in a lot of cases, a lot of concrete was managed in a reactive nature. There would be a development, there would be a change in the land use, the road outside would be affected. Different teams would fly through activity and make change. It wasn't really being gathered with the permits were being established depending on whatever was believed and whatever department. There's no way of trying to again to identify all of what's going on. In this way, we've gone through a whole range of tools. A lot of the areas limited a project and free parking, restricted, limited on and tools for managing parking are around time restrictions, different types of vehicles, parking and charging, and adding them together in time that charging together. We've had a lot of feedback about what are we doing different for residents, both visitors. That's led us to go down the track, residents parking and local parking. There are a number of other developments in addition to the ones that allow them to create user groups to operate with private holiday in their contract. Service permits, range of things, particularly over in the shared zone, Queenstown Town Centre, taking away the formalised parking to new parent permit. There is a user group that needs more help. There is a definite need to handling more than just shopping. Lots of responsibility at that time. Are we giving the right amount of taxi service? Not an issue over here at the moment. It could be if you grow. Gives us quite a lot of work to use outside and the current with taxi service $500 per annum, $550. We keep them raised. It's also something that we go across to the other area. Couple permits, the scheme we tried in Queenstown haven't been successful. Trying to remount it to do so down to less than 10, 12 users of that whole scheme. not value, but is the one thing still continues that we need to work over here. And bigger changes, particularly around this meeting, is to start by major changes. So, there's a range of plans. Just a summary there on the next slide about the different types of permits, what we intend to keep, we might change what's new. Don't go down into too much detail, a lot of that's in the background document provided. Residence permits is the one we're probably getting most questions on. The difficulty here is identifying what are the criteria for that permit. There is an expectation that if the residence permit is for automatic right to parking house. Everything else is here on zone. Maybe 50% of that zone, that street is allocated to parking. And residence permit is successful by one of the meet this criteria. Still change the point. And they give you exemptions, fees, and time. But the big blue sign to be in front of you. Generally, restriction of 120 minute parking for 5 minutes times. But you have your residence permit. You are exempt. You can park along. Also, residence permit. Someone that has loan discounted after they're not paid. Second part of that, the discount is for local play. Residence permit is in that loan. If you go to another town, parking, you're pay parking on Rock Street, you get a discount for an hour. We normally sell it.
Is it just so that you don't have a residence in anyone? It just catches the local element.
Yes, if you've got a resident permit, it's transfer.
It just,
That's the gist of what I wanted to get through. Only one more slide here, really relevant. Tech mapping. Trying to understand how we put all these systems together. At the moment, paper permits, really document to the council, we need to replace that. At the same time, we need to change the way we a lot of it. Enforcement, data gathering, monitoring, we need to extend vehicles around, taking the details, often as we can. That gives us a really good idea. Instead of sending the survey out every 6 months, audit, how will be going around lots of capacity, sample market, collecting that information that then we can work out how full our car parks are, where the busy areas we need to focus on, but also that same technology is then released through this mapping into the interface, how those process charge for. There's a whole lot of work here on the technology side, and that's one of our things that ties Monaco and France together, is we need that technology in place. We don't have funds for it before we can introduce things like the red first. Some of the signs and lines that simpler changes on restriction in the low thousands to activate, we still need enforcement officers time for changes. They are slightly simpler, but some of that thing we need technology. At that stage, that's really all I have goes through. I have identified a couple of key topics that I like to get through the nation. Yeah. What I want to do is jump over to the mapping, and really get from yourselves whether we're hitting the right pattern. Timing is really important. We've concentrated on an area so far. We're a little bit reluctant to expand that now, but it's something. Are there any questions on the information?
Go around the room, just for general, I think we'll go and knock these off one by one. Cody, any high level questions or observations?
Yeah, there's a few removals.
Are you going to do the one? Are you doing mapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to pull that mapping. Yeah.
Other stuff, what is all the funding going to go towards?
Funding is formal.
That's so we have a new revenue stream of parking. They're going to open up concession public transport.
Yeah, so we're checking with the finance team, to give you the money. Very much the idea of parking ban, not for but it does. Parking fines are on top. So here it's just being used charge. We have the finance that we are collecting from to transport project. But caveats to that, it is collected and preserved.
So I think it was always important. There's a direct correlation between any parking fees paid actually supports that within that vicinity, and for initiatives that actually continue to enhance either parking or the reserve or the town centre or the like. I think that is one of the underlying principles that I read in there.
So the tech part, that seems like a really key component. With no funding, when you need the council to basically put it in the next budget. What do you think about it?
And where if you're understanding what those costs are, and when quite a few options. If we need staff, on the side, we're going to buy in technology, collecting information and service. So, but it can cost me, but then it's going to be a lot better. Working with the knowledge management team now to work through those opportunities are met with the team that met with another 5 in license plate recognition software. Last time we did the trial, cost of a car plus camera equipment was $70,000. Should purchase it. It doesn't use something more. Maybe smarter camera, just parking the service. At the same time, we want to understand how that will connect into drive into the car park because we will make sure that it speaks to the same magic box that's in the middle education. So we already get that once we've decided exactly what it would be.
So do you think you'll have that for the next slot? Realistically, the council like this on this, how do you think it would be?
So I think there are some of the other areas like would be there's a lot of science and science tech. They are relatively low cost, very simple. Technology in there kind of does depend on council identifying budget for immediate on lower budget, that would be a little bit.
So realistically, the security is out here, like it's quite very fine. It's small, but it's quite good. Before we get.
It's about allocating the money and the budget we have at the moment. Yeah, they've got speed now. Money. This is the area. Tuesday. Not enough to go up. Purchasing.
It's really valuable question in terms of the MPSUD and the signal set that the space for new development. Does it cover that? Does it add anything to incentivize developments to cover where it might be problematic? Commercial street?
This is one of the main parts of the program. To take away assumption that on street parking is good. That's fine with you. practice suggests it. You can encourage that. It's not just we're looking for the practice and we to look at why we also manage. So the MPS is sort of driven us to management.
Yeah, and I get that there's management after the fact, but then I'm just talking about the signals that the draft sends to developers around how those streets will be managed and to incentivize them potentially to provide some on street. We can't tell them to, but if they know enough about how it will be managed outside their property, then sends a signal for what they should do.
Very much so.
Have you written, I guess the question is, have you developed this draft with that in mind?
So, yes, 2 or 3 years we've been working on this. I rather work streams there. They were planning to do we shouldn't be on
Right. I have speed ring them, so names. Interested in how we define new parent. I guess don't need an answer now. I guess just where is that need and where do you fall out of needing that closer parking? The other one would be around just the potentially old people who might want to have this advertising for customers, so sure it's maintain the ability for to overall monitoring option and just the possibility. And just
Look at the data here around the use of identified residents versus the other users above the general users, but a couple of things I'm a little concerned. The data we're using is already 2 or 3 years old. It's been a result of delays in delivery, but I would say that the data you've got relating to the McDougall Street Park on the lakefront this year will be completely different to what you have in this data. The occupancy is significantly high. And the same with Tree car park and stuff like that. I just think we get the timeliness of the data. It will, I suppose we can make some assumptions there, but it's changing rapidly. And yeah, we just need to be mindful of that.
If I could respond with, it's been raised several times, the information is already a couple of years old. One. We don't think any of the area here. That's the risk. To that extent, how we've got wide in that area. We know this area. We will be technology out there monitoring the
and without going, I've got a lot of questions around the mapping, but I won't go into those now. But I mean, I think in the report that it's around, like front B being paid parking and things like that. I think there's some philosophical stuff that doesn't quite work yet. And it may in the future, but I just look, I'm not opposed to considering paid parking in the town centre, but I think outside of that, we're a long way away from that. The lakefront B section, and yeah, and
Don't bring it up.
that's, I'll go back to a lot of those things, the mapping, and I mean, just the other thing that I'll just highlight is to just how much thought was into that bus hub not public transport, but the bus, dealing with coaches, buses, and because it's not entirely clear to me where the future bus hub will be, because we're sort of splitting to both at the moment. So yeah, okay.
I got a couple of years and I wanted up and down how we're now. I think we split the town. Just have parking policy. Because that's just one of the costs. Whereas I think the parts will come back. And even speaking actually to some of the because I don't know how to park. In the car park off Dunmore Street, they fully admit that part of the reason is often they're running late. It's just easy to park there. And they all go out every 2 hours to a roundabout thing. But back to the same area. And there's one thing that they really want is to know that when there's a height, that there is going to be some park, even if it's up way to this park. Like that, if they know that it's a park, then they will have it. Head straight there. Your car park. It's generally one way to park, and so they do a quick run through this just in case it was, and then they go and park somewhere in town and you just. So the general feeling is assuming that some kind of paid parking and a number plate recognition type of thing. Yeah. I think having some outside of this area, if we started there, yeah, we can come in from I know that I'm going to park. And they'll start using.
Thanks, Chris. It's been something we've been driving for the last 3 years because all roads, even when we talk about something obscure, but of nowhere, it always seems to come back to car parking. There was a lack of clarity in town as to what the strategy was. And we would be talking about something on Lismore Street with Lismore Park, and it would all come back down to parking. Or we'll be talking about something around where the doctors and come back to parking. So we need to, as a community and as an organisation, have the fortitude to address this and not to say it's too hard and kick it down the road. The work is being done. Yes, some of the data, I think the data will be done tomorrow, but next week and the following year, I think that things are changing so much. I look at this as a town where projections show that population growth and growth in visitors is going to continue to increase. The ability to continue to build more car parks is not viable. We don't have the land space, and we have a real challenge, particularly with downtown, and making sure that our public space is for public use, not for storage of personal storage of vehicles. So I just think that we are in a constrained supply side with a hugely increasing. I love the fact that you're looking at prioritising. So that sort of thing with parking is you need to prioritise it and identify it range. Those challenges, those sorts of things. So I think it's very good, very, very sound. I believe there's also a responsibility for property owners and retailers that there's a rule that if parking is extremely important for organisation and small business, then there is obligation to provide it. But for public ground used exclusively, that's why prioritise for me. So we will always keep their attention. There's nothing to be done. The businesses. New customers and space that should be. Couple other things. Sometimes there's this concept of we have free parking. We do not have free parking. Stage 2, down Wall Street, $780,000 to put that parking on us. Over $750 million. Okay, that fell on ratepayers. So the concept of it's not free parking, that's hidden cost parking. And at the moment, those that often benefit from it and those people come and enjoy our town and spend a day or two here are benefiting from it. And it is the community that is paying for that. So I just want to make sure that we're very, very clear that there is no such thing as free. I think there's also, the last thing I'll say is there is conversation, and we won't just go to pre, but I don't think we can talk about like parking in isolation downtown without that strategy for the continued reimagination, redevelopment, reinvigoration of towns. I think it goes hand in hand. I don't think parking is one aspect of it. It obviously plays a predominant part of the conversation, but we need to look at the town centre as being that bringing them into town and people will come here because it's not a car park jungle. And that's what will differentiate us, and that's what will continue to thrive for a placemaking for a community and a central hub and a gathering point and a strong commercial centre. I think that will happen because of the work that we do and having our priorities and about looking at how it's possibly for people. I'd like us to move on to the mapping, because I know that's important to you and it's been raised. And so would you like to say that map is there? So we had sent out as a previous email the GIS that goes into something there and are you wanting just for only for things that don't sit well with people at the moment?
Pretty much, yeah. If I can explain what we have here, we try and make it that we're not sure it's going to be that piece we use for public consultation at the moment. We want that to be interactive. We want something to be able to explain what each person looks at within the impact. What we're trying to do is explain the version we've given you is more viewer. If we think everybody keep everything on, so we've trusted you so far to take a look at that and back to the comment. And the version other versions here allow us to, when we look into what's inside you, what we've currently got, how we've zoned it, what the staging might be, what the change. Again, these questions around the mapping are, yes, it's a very visual here. There is always putting multi-dollar benefits are right from that. But also is there any general things in that want to be paid here? Not specifically the amount of charge for the fact that this is mine. Do we charge 8 to 6? We do bring in charge. On phasing here, when we work on the core of the town centre here, happens as soon as the restriction comes in, as soon as parking starts to get displaced out of us. Start to go to residential property, no limitations, starts to push out. So if we do too little, we'll be doing is displacing. So we try to understand how we scale or scope that, timing right. And yes, still interested in the detail of it, we got some individual looking for that direction.
Can you just sort of speak to how you got from the report to the decisions on the map? And like, I suppose, for this example, how did you choose a time limit? The time limit of parking, context of that broader strategy.
What we did is we looked at the different users and we looked at the station experience. We looked at the range of the law. Transaction on things with that, obviously, somewhere on the reach. Look across all those different user groups, built on the experience we have, came up with these solutions. They may not be the solutions, but we very much consider what it looks like from the user. We want to know the whole of that street has the same kind of parking, same part of charge, restriction. If we've got a mobility space, we've got a type of permit, what's the restriction on that? So where will I go? I understand. Then we took all those things together, learned a lot from Britain. We have loading zones from 10 years ago, transport vehicles, could there be a split between we now so undersubscribed that loading zones for both those users and at night more simply active. These three types we learn more or less and how we plan the other area, what we can do. So for one thing, we see the general zone-based parking. Do what we think we can extend that, we don't say that. So that's how we come around and that and all the different user groups are understanding the use. So that could be.
Any comments? Let's just go, just to slip down, which I mean, take this is the one for let's keep it, you know, as substantive as possible, because I think if we end up, you don't get this to go to public consultation, so what's maybe 4 or 5 key things on the map that don't resonate as well with you from your look to. Yeah, everybody.
Loading bays are good. I think taking 2 loading bays in Hilton Street's not tenable in my view. I think it's and equally looking at the nature of those businesses and you know, some of them have got access to the back of Pembroke Lane, some of them have got parking. I just don't think we could justify taking up parking loading bays on Hilton Street without, you know, good reason. I just can't see what that is. Going back to your previous point, I'm not sure we've got the balance right around who the users are. And Upper out the streets, probably an example I would speak to is that, you know, you want P10, a certain amount of P10s for people to go to Foursquare and pick up their milk. And you know, there's probably a secondary one, things like the bank, they need a 30. But there's also restaurants and various things. So, I mean, I think that broadly speaking, I don't think customs of restaurants are very well provided in here, whether it be lunch or you know, early dinner or whatever, is that, you know, we should be encouraging custom businesses that, you know, want an hour and a half for lunch. And you've got to think about who those users are. And I think we've closed out a bunch of those with 2 times restrictions in some places. And I take your point about, you know, encouraging worker parking. I think we've missed a bit of a trick there in how we treat Brownston Street and Armour Street from Pembroke Park. I mean, I think the point is you want the stuff closer to be town to be turning over, further away from town, you can have free all day parking. And Brownston Street's classic because you see that, you see it in action. So you've got multiple bays, so you could, bay 1 could be, you know, P1 120, bay 2 could be P 240, and the other one unrestricted. You know, there's 3 big bays. I think you need to be doing that to encourage, you know, people to work further. And the same with at the moment, we're adding a P250 along Pembroke Park on the park side. At the moment, we've got it on the lake side, which is good. At the moment, it's unrestricted on the park side. And I think that mostly works, but you might include a section near the skate park, for instance, that's got a restriction, but the other stuff won't be free. It might be unrestricted further up. So they're just trying to think about those types of levers that we've got. I think this needs some more work here in terms of the detail. And I can go through this right list of the things that I would, rather than trying to cover them all off. The one that sort of leaves me really unsure of why we're even doing it is the one in front of the Kai, which is the loading bay and the mobility park. And I mean, I can say that I use that incredibly regularly, but we're moving it and I can't see why, but I also can't see, it's not like we're accompanying it with a public domain, a change to public domain or like an outdoor seating or something like that. It just seems to be arbitrary and unhelpful without any backup to it. So,
Another one.
what I will collect this year, maybe the loading bay at the mobility park and moving them around, taking away other spaces, the loading bay, which are obviously popular because people go through for lunch and pick up the dough dinner. So I think that would be a unnecessary space.
I mean, it's one particularly, a few things. Like, it is. Do swap that out from the ground. All of that.
I use it every day, it's fine. It's actually easier than many.
That's why we're looking at it, because it comes through all. They keep coming back.
Yeah, like I said, if it was accompanied by a public domain, just design change, if you wanted background or seating or something, I can understand it, but it's not. So.
Thank you. Brendan, I know there'll be more you'd like to contribute. At a high level, some substantial changes from that. Chris.
I'm going to agree with Queen about the loading base in Albert Street. Most of those is somewhere else. So I don't think that is true. The other one that causes me problems is parking on both sides of Grandison Street where the food trucks are, and that there's a lot of pedestrian movements and vehicles parking on the other times. And I'm not quite sure exactly what the answer is, but not. Well, actually, as an expert, because I know, I'm fully in favour of making it far easier for me to get in and out of town. I have any parks, but the particular one would be quite food trucks. Whole rainy night. And because Brownson Street is basically the main thoroughfare across town, it seems to be going more quickly.
That is horrible. Just add something to that. The parking bay, the loading bay, and I don't know who it's expressly for, but I assume it's for the car yard because they might be loading and unloading cars. Now, they're only going to be doing that during the day, and the caravan users are at night. So put a time frame on the park loading bay in that case.
I think they did address that other day when we just and we had changed so that we know what the do.
Yeah, I think it was people in Wānaka use loading bays basically as a locals car park, which is at this point okay.
One of the big things that as we look at is the terms and adjustments we found with group what is the capacity to adapt and to look at change things as that because we can't figure out anything. We do it rather than figure it out. But the way that we write it is going to be quite strict.
I think we are open to that, and we want to the visitor.
Yeah.
The local user will understand from more about where it is available. We need to make this available. How do we go through? We can make a change. This is yet to go to public consultation for anticipating lots of comments there, but we don't want to have in one stretch 10 different uses. We're trying to make it not standardised, but let people format. So yes, we are changing, but the change needs to be suitable for a number of user groups, maybe not just one.
Because maybe in this time I say right, and there would be some things, but just given as you go. Is there a way of are you still going to It's just still an ability to go, all right, well, now their team that needs to be 30, we thought it would be 10, without having to go activity to go, oh, this team and go in. Like, is there scope to give yourself flexibility in that?
We can change parking through the committee or the council. That's different to the, we do that regularly as schedules to the infrastructure.
We take the reform process, so they can do it.
But it's easier, we don't have to renew by law.
That's main reassurance based on previous other inspirations, but I think it would be.
So this is just a high level, I'm sorry, report, but I'm in favour of going from all this. So yes, the more we take away and the more intensification we can have. The changes in that. Where are the parking? Where are workers going to park? And I know it kind of backs, but I mean, where are they going to park? And they're not going to, they maybe can't afford to pay that. So I just think it's all very well to try and change how we manage parking, but we don't have anywhere else for it to go. That would be something that I would just like to see. Just a scope of, and I know a lot of it is very divisive, it's saying that we don't want car parks, but a lot of people do, so yeah, anyway. Ardmore Street, Upper Ardmore, that is moving to pay, or that's proposed pay. I really like the idea on many of the others. I wondered why is that paid and the other places aren't paid? Or other places have like free for hour and then $2.
Might be the difference on the lakefront. That's a reserve, so parks and reserve. We have to allow free parking for a little short time. So everything else, like road corridor work.
However, I like the idea of first hour free, but I don't know. As if someone that just comes in, you want people to come in and pop into the town. I don't park for 3 hours. I'm having a coffee for an hour. So I do like that idea, but for community sentiment, I feel like people would appreciate that. I understand we're trying to manage it. Buses, I guess people in the business community bring this up and John Mountain. But I can't remember, but people have been talking to me like that there's more buses coming and we seem to be taking away slots for them to go. And I see you have put in a new one on Wānaka-Upper, which I think will probably annoy the car drivers, but I do see that they need somewhere to go. But perhaps where else could they go without taking away, instead of taking away car parks, where else could they go? Could they not go somewhere into the McDougal Street area? And then are you going to the concerns?
I'm going to just walk those through. Kathy's got the same as well.
Well,
So
the
Kathy,
ones, what is that one? Water sports car park. That's, I noticed in the data you collected, it was only about really at 50% capacity, but I think that's like very much.
Yeah, we also had, it was unrestricted in that we've got parking all over the grass till this year, so now it's sort of contained. It's almost 100%.
Yeah, and buses park there as well, which obviously they're going to, but I feel like that may just need a little bit more work in it. And
You're talking something dedicated with the coach park?
yes, yeah, I don't know, no, yeah. And because there's this area here, you can see right now, there's coaches always backed up, and it's becoming really unsafe.
One point before where it's just going, well, what's the future of bus parking in town?
Yeah.
Because I noticed overnight parking at the dinosaur park for coaches, and I'm just like, that doesn't resonate with me at all. I don't think that's the place to have overnight parking for buses at all. And equally, if we're increasingly going to make that public domain through stage 4 and stuff like that, I think we've got to seriously look at whether buses, that's the right place for buses at all, because there's huge pedestrian conflict. So I'm not opposed to the gardens route. I just want to see some more strategic thinking around the bus transport piece.
Thank you.
But most residents said that agree, strategy around bus parking and looking into the future. I agree with Nicola around the parking. A lot of these things are sort of have a town centric view attached to them, but we have townships and obviously I'm Glenorchy and, you know, we don't have a bus and we're never going to get a bus. Maybe a little bit different with them, probably not private. I don't know, but whether or not alternatives, you have to enable people to park. And it needs to be affordable. I want to see it coming your workers. So that we have to be capable. Okay. Obviously pass. The only thing I was going to mention was the EVs. You just got a couple of little. What's the thinking around that? Are we thinking private sector is going to provide all of that? We don't need to go there.
So far, I've been on projects and that's that company. Yeah. That. Whether cases to be charged for the yeah, usually a lot of these people vision.
Just that it takes longer. So, you know, it's not the same as a gas station, you can't be filling and start. So I think we have to, if we want to make the change, and that is part of our broad policy. So to me, the parking plans and guidelines, strategies, all of this stuff should cover this. It should be integral. So if we've looked at putting this into a particular, we were talking earlier about having someone dedicated, they really need to be working in with the other parts of the organisation that are focusing on electrification. So if that hasn't been done, I'd suggest maybe we just need to go back and run it through those teams with a focus on EV and electrification, and before we send the draft out. I think we need to set the direction. The strategy should be sending signals to the market about how we're going to be handling these things. There should be certainty. So
there is a paragraph in it.
Okay, yeah, we need more than a paragraph, I think, if we're going to drive and incentivize this stuff. Thank you.
I just have one.
Look it all fine.
I know, that's why I was like, I'll go. Dunmore Street car park, you know what? Why is that no change? I thought that would be fine one to put pay park.
But it's changed from 240 to 180.
$2, no.
Yeah, it changed.
Guys, take that.
Jeremy, you ready? Outside the ground, some caravans, there needs to be 10-minute parking, there's lots of just drop on and pick up. It'll be stuck there, so all being 90, it's like it just needs to be a couple of spots there for the 10 minutes. Out here, we've got 30-minute parking just in the laneway here. I'm not sure anyone comes to that one, because anyone comes to 30 minutes. Just wanted to sort of understand that, like you're coming to an Armstrong room for a meeting, or so I think it just seems to be a bit innocuous. The Ardmore Street parking down by the skate park on the Pembroke Park side, it's effectively really close to town. So as been mentioned, I think we can't just make that from there all the way down to McDougall Street the same amount. I think it needs to be segregated. Some of that would effectively be seen as town parking. I'm interested in just thinking a little bit more around McDougall Street car park down on the lakefront there. We've got no restrictions there, and I am wondering whether that's going to end up just being where a lot of people will park and for the whole day, and the mate takes them out to their work at TC or whatever, and whether we really want to have that McDougall Street formalised car park as an all-day car park. And I'm not sure that we do, but that is where it's being used at the moment, particularly in the ski season. If we understand that, it's cool. But I have a different approach to commuter parking. If you're coming in here working in May and you have to work an extra 7 minutes at the start of the end of your day. I think that's just part of what it is to have the privilege to store your vehicle for 8, not 1 hours. So what I do agree with the team is it should be saying, but Lismore Headitch is working in a should be 10B Upton should be where it is, actually sort of saying we've acknowledged that, but I don't think we have an obligation to, because employers should have an obligation. And if their staff don't want to walk 7 minutes in the morning, 7 minutes in the evening after sitting down in front of a PC and being dealt with the whole day, then that's, I think that's an employer situation. So I have that balance. Acknowledge that it's a real need, and that's the precincts we think that would be. But it's really valuable to have someone come here for 9 hours, store their vehicle for free, and thinking that's the right, as a privilege. 4 minutes to go, and I'm going to ask a question that it's pretty obvious that I want the answer to. Has this been helpful to you, Tony? Yeah. Right answer. But there's probably a lot more to discuss. So how can we, there's so much more detail, how can we get the best out of the community for the feedback in?
So, all the information you've given today is very helpful. Lots of things we'll go back and double check how we cover that in our strategy and the timeline there, and we answer your questions. We are going to take this to council workshop for the 24th. We have further input for it. If I could ask, we get back in by that time. Because related to the scope as it stands at the moment, we appreciate it rather than something outside that. It's all helpful for us. The big questions I have are acknowledging we don't have that budget in place yet. Are we staying with this 2027, allowing that we have funding in the technology? Is this a 3-year to the next stage? We'll roll this out, monitor it for a couple of years before we make interventions, and that's sort of big picture for the community that we can sit around the table and understand what we know. We're looking for that community.
You think that you ask those specific questions and bring them to me? I'll go out to the team and see if there's competencies used and then come back to the coordinator. I think that's really crucial, and that requires a bit of thinking. And there will be some data, so I'll make sure we create time and let me know when you need to know that information.
Is there a way that each of those little dots is in a table somewhere? So if we could have that as a table and with a comment section, and we could just add comments saying we agree with this, or we think this one should be considered. It just might be an easier way to provide it.
I think it's important to be really useful about.
Yeah, I can understand. So we can reference it. We go back, if we get the detail, we can go back and reference it by using the map. But yeah, it is a little bit hard to continue to click on.
On timing, can you share some information on cost? What's it going to cost to set this up, ballpark? Because the cost benefit matters in terms of timing, I think. Also, any other integrated pieces of work that are going on around town centre development and stuff. Again, there would be no point in seeing if it was going to be something else it should be integrated with, and that may change things, and we have to do it once, do it right.
So we're going to have some very, very rough orders.
Okay, just for the tech. So, what revenue would you generate from it?
We haven't looked at that yet. Basic calculation. That's all the projection, what we know.
Because we're looking at $1 or $2 an hour in nice to go. Well, actually, it's not washing its face. We actually have to increase the charges, and that change may change our view because how big is the problem? How much do you want to? So I think we need probably a bit more detail because it's quite conceptual at the moment.
We can give generalizations on the revenue. We can look at how changes the standards we can increase. Maybe that way, extrapolate them better. That was 650 an hour, and minus
don't want to be doing this like, hey, yeah, go for it, guys, sounds great, and then finding out that the prices have to double.
Well, the people go on the principle that says that this has to be cost neutral. So that's the
Well, I think it
principle.
does, our renewable energy policy will set that, so I don't know, it is
Yeah,
useful.
it's an underlying foundation principle that any parking changes or the implementation of paid parking, direct paid parking, as we all know, direct paid parking has to be cost neutral.
For us, it's about managing the traffic. It's now managing the congestion, so even if there was a cost to it, other benefits.
I understand, but Nikki's right, I concur with that, but Nikki's that
Is
policy
it a
suggests.
policy, it's a use of fees and showing, but it's all around the portion that's paid by use on the portion. I think it might be something, I just can't remember, I should remember.
I think that's a takeaway to that time, because I think we've got to be aware of that. If it's open, then it allows us to be a little bit broader in thinking. If there is actually a cost thing, obviously that needs to be followed. But we need to not just it's going to before you getting that back. I'm also just for the little happy to see through some details up in John as well. We'll forward that on to you. I don't think anything's been lost by us this putting it across directly to you. So
Thank you very much.
before break, I should have said, because we had our plans earlier, that Kathy and John are making apologies for this and that's been noted. We're going to have a break now, 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk about Rockabilly Gully. We're back, we'll kick off again. Rockabilly Gully Erosion Remediation Project. Would you guys like to, just in case, and for the record, just introduce yourselves? We are being recorded.
Yes, so what we have talked about, what the erosion project, and we covered on a good time in terms of concept design phase. So, yes, on this project, who was going to lead their presentation this morning, and probably some technical questions, or he's on here to support the board. So, no questions.
So your presentation, do you want to take that as read, or is there anything you want to highlight? Yeah.
Well, there's options there, I guess, but whether you prefer to take it as read or whether you
Prefer to take it as read.
that's it's fine. So really then we're going to question. Yes.
I'd like to start at the big thing because a number of people have been on council at the time. There is still a little bit of historical angst with this, and I know that's before your time, etc. But has this effectively, the last time this came to the community board, I think we discussed it as a reminder, the North Lake development, the consenting didn't really account for climatic events and everything like that. So basically the community is now paying for the remediation of some consenting issues that weren't probably as broad or as deep or as defined, nuanced, defined, putting expectations around the development or the amount of work we got done.
Well, I think it's actually pretty a lot simpler than that to explain, in as much as at the time it improved the actual council requirements. They applied with council's requirements of the day. Yeah. That perhaps there's a little bit of work in there, and just a sort of I have actually been in council for I think it's been 16 years, and I do actually remember that sometime in the past where we actually adopted NZ or the as our infrastructure code, this was where draft documents and that became onerous, very hard to implement to like the national standard, which of course includes information. Now I don't want to be absolutely specific on this, but there were always amendments to the but otherwise stormwater in there would have been very generic for the whole thing, which of course, I mean, broadly speaking, these things are improved and those majority of the country is sitting on coastal areas, and their receiving environment for storm runoff is the sea, whereas ours is the headwaters of Clutha. And I would say that, to cut a very long story short, the standards of the day, which the subdivision was designed to, fail in terms of downstream effects on the sea environment.
I mean, I think that's just the follow-up question. Do you think that we've got exposure elsewhere, or do you think that everything's been developed that was within the time? Is there any latent sort of stuff that we should be aware of that there is stormwater risk significant? I mean, we've had alpha series as well, so Bullock Creek, so we know about that. Do we feel that there may be other
Inherently, and so a lot of Wānaka and Queensland is quite historic when they were really over standards, and so you really down to the lakeside reserves, which are actually reasonably generous on the Wānaka side. Queensland side really quite small. And you then behind the reserves you build development. So the thing about stormwater is, generally speaking, it's like hungry potentially rent. So there will be some legacy issues district wide in terms of moving forward with the current standards. I can't speak to those, or not here right now anyway, but I think that's but there will be, from the beginning of development, given this area, there will be legacy issues necessarily. So a sort of boomy time, time like from 2005, maybe or 2000, standards that were didn't break through to sort of late and that matter serious. So that there will be other issues, sure.
that will land on the remediate, or else it will compromise environmental values?
Basically,
What I would say is, I mean, I think in this case, I think they just got the assumptions around redevelopment flows just wrong, completely wrong. I mean, I think that the standards aside, they made the assumptions were just fundamentally wrong. Knowing that area beforehand, you had a dirt road with very large swales, a lot of grass area on both sides, and a basically clogged culvert that was about this big. Now, water just simply didn't flow from North Lake across the outlet road and down into Rockabilly Gully readily or quickly. It just didn't occur, and it mostly landed in the swales and sort of spread out, soaked away. There were big puddles there regularly. There were, it just, there's a fundamental change.
over the time they didn't actually require them to correct that as such. It's more a case of about large events, and say you couldn't have flows over the size of those large events. That's not saying you couldn't have an event there every week, which is the problem. It's the fact that you're getting flows more regularly, and the receiving environment can take it. Storm event. But when it happens too regularly, it can't maybe stuff. That's so it was actually designed for those larger storm events, but not for the
But then the land, and I'm not trying to get too deeply, but the land would have just held water and obviously with hard surfaces and all that sort of stuff. It just was different. It's fundamentally different. There's no way.
Absolutely. I mean, to be really, when you take a greenfield site, and if anyone here has ever walked through wet grass after the rain, you go about 10 meters, legs are soaking, and your socks are soaking, your shoes are wet through, and that's just through walking through the long grass. So imagine you have 180 hectares of that long grass, and water is just holding just with the lead of grass, let alone before it gets the little puddles all over your plant. Congratulations for rain. Times that by 1 million plants and 1 million tiny puddles, that's where the stormwater is sitting. Whereas you go and do a subdivision, you're gone, and it is extremely hard to correct large stream beds, particularly more large stream bed. There is no more, you know, like grass and it goes through that flow. That's the bit they can sort of quantify and after that do storage and make it back to something similar to pre-development. But otherwise, it's very hard to recreate a billion blades of grass in a million times.
When you contain it in the basin and in the channel.
And then, well, that's right. So it's actually for those small rain events. It's very hard to do anything other than put it back into the basin. It's previously held with others. So why?
You can't change the past, but we can certainly
Well,
learn,
exactly.
we can certainly learn from it. That's what my concern is. This is frustrating. It's
Sorry, that's something.
it's upsetting. It's frustrating. It's been around for a long time. It has compromised. We've all got photos of where the sediment flows onto the and been quite significant. The degradation of the tracks and stuff that are going through the. But it's just, I just wanted to try, and I'm sure there's institutional understanding there and acknowledgement that just want to make sure that there's been learnings. And I know we're not council, but from a community board that we takes the environment very seriously. It's just so important for us that we don't do everything we can to ensure that this is good for our kids and grandkids.
And on Tuesday, we will watch out council actually name that on Sunday. It's an old station last year. It was updated last year. In defeating the smaller elements of that, to be honest, I can't actually. So we you know, the point of view rather than our engineering point of view, right? You know, sort of go back to you on that, but.
I will do the review currently. Actually, the storm system will be picked up and reviewed. Certainly would be previous round.
It's just, you know, having some targets. And I think when it does have that, we change it now, but yes, you know, it's not always right there. That's the thing, it's things, seeing it CCR. But we should be on how it's different. Highest chance of success and in these legacy issues, or at least addressing all these legacy issues to give us confidence. Learning from this test. That's all I really is. And it's,
Yeah.
You know, it's the thing that's the previous thing. The development's still there. And I think, you know, we have expertise at playing where basic in natural solutions. Figure out.
Looking at Wānaka Forest, how's that going to impact that? Because half of the forest flows down to North Lake. I mean, has that been factored in as well? That gets deforested, just deforested.
Yeah. Well, section first.
And so it's been.
I need to explain the project a bit more then. I mean, just looking, explain what's involved with this basin and start get downstream as well.
Yeah, so the basin, essentially there are currently two basins, and the current concept is to generally increase the size of the second basin quite considerably, pretty much about as much as can be done with the main soil.
He's like a percent bigger, like it's sort of 1/3, 2/3 of it. So.
Yeah, so it's of course through the sides. And then there's also modifications to the inlet structure to the basin and the outlet structure to the basins too. The big difference is that currently the North Lake subdivision goes straight into direct valley. Currently, the big change is that for the day-to-day events, it's interesting basins. And there will be potentially a degree of soakage with the new basin, but otherwise, the larger of the day-to-day events, it will fill and then we can slowly into what we go. So what you're doing currently, and I'm sure you've been there, we've witnessed it yourself, is quite dramatic in day-to-day events. The cumulative concentration of some flow that rise at the end of the gully as quite far away and that is the issue. So rather than erosion, so rather than being the gully ponds, fill up the ponds and then discharge slow.
So the set basin too, I mean, what will that look like in real terms? I mean, just how industrial will it look, or how? I mean, it's they've done a reasonable job with the existing basins. They're far from perfect, but in terms of this, I suppose the point being, this fulfills a dual function. It's an open space reserve, if you like, as I know it's a local purpose reserve for stormwater, but it's the only and is it still going to be
solution look like?
Yeah, it's still going to be a relatively.
I guess some of the differences are front basins are wet and honestly, it's not designed that way, but the more basin find it, which are just last bit of image. So the sides are generally steeper than the new proposed basin.
The current one is steeper.
The steeper and planted, and they're actually fenced with the equipment. Yeah. Forest which is not great, but equally I don't know. That in terms of basins and stars and having amenities, and great having like reference. So
They're not plastic sheeting.
Yeah, so the new basin it's intended to be unfenced and grass and go dry.
Oh, okay. So it'll be more like a big swale type thing. Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
there is room, literally room, metaphorically room for activities there. I guess you end up with the current reserve outside of the basin with the gravel track there. It's nothing. Yeah, it's something.
It's something. So I suppose there's a couple of things to that. That's good to hear because I think it does help. I mean, to me, it feels like the land falls away to the river end of basin too. So I mean, how big is that fund going to be? What's the scale of the earthworks there?
In terms of quantity, actually,
at the moment, it's more sort of a hole in the ground. Where as you go further down, it's obviously going to be built up quite a lot.
Well, it's a cut fill exercise. So the intention of
yeah.
But it is the intention is to, I think the landscape through as well. Intention is to accentuate some natural slopes rather than having a mad obvious kind of like look. So accentuate extend existing expenses to a ground. No, should sort of play in probably. And yes, so generally speaking, a cut fill situation. So kind of close to the exact cross sections, what is your maximum fill area versus the cut? Yes, so you might end up with I think 3/4 and 2 meters from the sides of the pump, but the policy inverse is down lower than existing ground level. And so higher existing, it doesn't mean the highest
What will the highest fill level be on the downstream side? It's the highest, the deepest fill depth.
There are some when you start getting over to the end closest to the river, then I'm guessing
But I have to.
It feels like more than that, so it feels like
It could be,
meters,
so it
but,
actually.
but anyway, yeah, I mean, look, I won't dwell on it too long, but yeah, obviously just trying to maintain some level of amenity, the paths around the outside, but I know the Tracks Trust would love to see that path extended to the boundary of Hikawai, because we have other plans we'd like to link into that network, provide a natural connection into that trail network as well, so.
Go for a while. Next, you do a question?
Yes.
Probably,
Well, it'd be great if you could build the gravel path down. I mean, you've got obviously got access down to that boundary anyway, and you've got to push dirt around. So it'd be great if you could just form the.
Is this the boundary with the sections currently being developed?
Well, from
the north.
yeah. So there's those little car parks at the end and the two basins, and there's obviously existing paths. What we're talking about is extending the path down to the boundary of Hikawai, down from Bidley Gully. Yeah, and because they will pick up with the Hikawai loop, and then even potentially a new path to a trail through there, so check the existing alert. Right.
We want to take that one.
Are we funding the block? Yeah, is this funding the investment? And just look, it's just a general question of this is really the channel was deeper into these basins and then it goes on I just is there any way of dissipating these from these things and making water opening this rather than channelizing? Maybe that's what we're doing, but
In this
about water,
particular
stormwater
instance,
design, but also about this.
in this particular instance, it's going to be hard. There are all sorts of bluffs, bits and pieces in that area. And ultimately, there are a number of gullies that lead down to the Clutha River. Wānaka-Upper Gully is from the larger ones, really quite a significant catchment. So I guess one of the points to this too is that the works we're doing really has an effect on, say, up to 1 or 2 year type storm events. Much above that, the majority of flow, what it suggests the majority of the flow ends up getting to the big gully is actually coming from the greater catchment side. So there is a limit to what you can redirect away to actually get away from what the gully. You know, it's quite a big catchment. So we did look at there's for example, a paper road that off in the direction of the Clutha River, but it goes uphill. So it's not going to, it will end up turning around and ending up back in.
Go to the future, because it's getting developed. How are we distinguishing between flows that are from causing problems versus other areas covering? And I'm not at some question you can probably answer here, but I feel like there's a bigger piece of work that needs to maybe come to us around the risks and opportunities and how we could deal with things ahead of time rather than on a consistent
And the improvements that have this next someone.
Yeah, but we won't see it like as councillors, like, because I see this as a kind of a risk. And how do we address the risks? How do we mitigate those? What's our control plan? And then how does that filter into the code of practice? So like, is there a level above where we can have some strategic input? I'll open you to a question, I can take that offline, but you can see otherwise problems continuing. And you know, the cumulative on the gully may have effects on maintenance of what we're doing because we're constructing something that will need to be maintained. There may be other inputs that cause ongoing problems to that. So yeah, further development within the catchment, and you know, if that's more directed, less overland flow, but obviously more channeled, that will end up in the gully as well. we're taking responsibility for a bunch of works in there that we will need to maintain presumably if things go wrong. So the contribution of others to that, does the ratepayer end up paying for everything? That is a pretty big question, but.
The, I think there's a sort of the stormwater model and here the whole base, the whole headline. So we do understand now what flows are quite wrong from to forest now on.
Yeah, it's just a case of how everything changes the flow and then the nature of the flow. We understand the quantities like pre-development flows and the volumes, but the nature of the flow changes, right?
The increased understanding.
Yeah, and depending on how everything is configured, subtle changes can change things quite dramatically. And so I can look into it another end. Thank you.
So you're going to phase it. One is the basin modifications, and then you have to do the valley route. Pressure as project manager, your community groups could still be obviously people through Hawaii, we slow mountain biking and stuff. So it's liaison with like Wānaka and the community just to ensure that they're signalled as well. I'm sure if they do track closures or whatever. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Is anything else team? All good.
What was the total cost? I missed that.
Well, we asked a question, he asked a question, so he's filming it, that the quantum wasn't discussed. What are we looking at? Both the two.
Because I know it's budgeted in the existing LCP, but I just is that.
It's about 5 million.
That's the total cost.
Yeah.
And what's the budget?
So that's
That's the budget. What's the estimated cost of delivery?
A little higher.
That's what I was hearing. That's the bit I was hearing.
it's currently a little bit higher than that. There's maybe options regarding our federal administration. So we need to look through that with a designer and well, once we have the concept design on and approved middle of March, we'll have the application we can put in Mercy and draw to get their feedback and what we're proposing. The level of intervention is not planned to reduce.
The I mean, pointing out that the extreme end of this is you end up with a concrete channel from one end to the other. And that's not what we want. We want a fairly sensitive, particularly the lower Rockabilly Gully, we want a fairly sensitive approach taken, with some rock armouring or whatever is required.
So basically it's going to happen irrespective because there's not off dock land, it's flow plan control. And then there's an option just to do basin 2, isn't it? And then everything else. Flow from there. Yeah. What's the cost for the breakdown? What's the cost for basin 2, the basin 2 and let project the aspect before we go down into the actual gully? It's significant, isn't it? I noticed you sort of brochure about it, and it's like, it's
I think it's mentioned access issues. So getting in the easy to get into them with your luck to get in. It just takes longer to get all the vehicles in, to get all the rocks. It's just accessible.
Yeah, from an operational point of view, so there, strategic point of view, we talk about growth and practice, like play it like. Okay. So I guess I'm just seeing where council requests that may go again, but in terms of how we can get in and again, but deal with what
fine. Thank you very much for coming and sharing that with us. Just on the next meeting.
I was just going to say, too, there was one other thing you referred to, Allenby Farm subdivision. It's not owned by Allenby Farms anymore, and it should be the term should be changed.
Yeah, WFH.
Interesting. Very good. So slightly bit of time, and thanks to the property team for the infrastructure team coming along. All good. Cheers, Simon. John, Megan, you're good to go. The last year item is around dental reference. Governance agreement.
Today, you know, I'm still on leave, but we have been thankful that excellent. So thank you. And I think the paper's really clear. We're back here because we have some new minutes of the board. Obviously, we had Noel lead the board for a session in September to review the terms of reference and the agreement. We've had the changes which are made clear, and now this is just a chance before we bring this as a paper to you, for you to then recommend your changes through to full council to have another discussion or you to raise anything additional that you would like to.
So I think the one thing that we did convene earlier and did a little bit of a workshop on this ahead of time.
Okay.
I think the license to occupy is an area that we thought is ripe for some reflection. When I looked through the last term, LTOs were by far and away the most common item that came onto the board agenda. In that last term, we didn't change any of the staff recommendations, and we did actually highlight to staff that there was a lot of repeated things, and we used the example of the veranda over Three Parks over Sir Tim Wallace Drive. Every time there's a new building, whole paper gets done to do a light LTO to effectively agree what we've already agreed, that there should be veranda space, and it's a continuation, and we are basically rubber stamping a lot of staff work. So we are saying that there could be some efficiencies there for staff. There could be some efficiencies there for us. There needs to be a little bit of work because we talked about an exception basis, but we don't quite know what the exception is. So we believe that there is a need for maybe occasionally LTOs to come to us, but if they are reasonably standard within policy, non-contentious, we, objectively have community support, all that sort of stuff, container on a reserve, outside on a verge. So maybe there was just a little bit of a chance to reflect that. Yeah.
What we probably would need to do to change the delegation necessarily, but what I'm thinking is that what we could potentially do is have a schedule of the LTO, and perhaps we'd all be comfortable if they just went to the chair, and perhaps they could identify any exceptions that they think around those LTOs, and you can agree or not whether you want to see those come through as paper or if you'll get them to deal with those.
Would staff still do the full paper for that?
Well, if you're saying there's efficiencies to be gained, I'm sure that's music to their ears.
Well, that's
But if you make a decision, the delegation delegated the decision, Simon made the decision, he'd still have to have the government act requirements kind of in front of him, whereas if it's
I would need to look at the delegation to the officers. So if you were saying this is not something we need to come, as long as they had delegation deal with it, and some of them do, and I'm the LTOs, that might be the case, but we can go into.
We're trying to look for a sort of sense of pragmatism.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we didn't carefully define it. We just wanted to share it and say efficiencies and time, stuff like that. We have to be careful that there is not something that is, and this is all subjective, isn't it? Contentious, really contentious, that sort of things. I think you'll struggle a little bit with this because it's a little bit grey around this. Maybe not. Well,
That's where I think if we.
that is where we're not sure where we can get this.
There's two parts to it, isn't there? One is to ensure that you still have this stuff. The other is to ensure that we're within sorry, I can't say that. Delegations
Yep.
to enable the right body to make that decision. So, can we have a look at that?
Yeah. Hopefully there is somewhere there. Did you have a suggestion? Yep.
And I thought of it when you said the word schedule, and I think that's where it lies, is we have to make sure the policy is right. And there will be things that the policy doesn't deal with very well, and what staff tend to do is come to us and say, oh, but the policy is not to put anything in the public realm. Well, there are times when it's needed. And I think what may happen is, if let's say the delegation went back to start, we didn't have it, but we had reporting on how it was exercised. So we could see the things that have been declined, we could see the things that have been approved, and we could have a little section on contentious issues. The things that came up that where the policy wasn't clear.
So you might need to take the delegation out, but actually bring a standing report.
Bring a standing report on what's been approved, what hasn't, where the contentious issues are, and where the policy hasn't been quite clear, or where the policy isn't working. So those categories are things to report on, and then we could do reviews of the policy rather than doing the approvals.
It's a really good point, because the same way that it's not recommending a lot of it is people. They go, well, it's not our role to interfere, and every problem that when we go through it and oversight, it speaks to nuance of what could we do that is going to create a better output, because we're saying it's a thing about
Yeah.
So,
All right, well, we'll take that one.
The thing we talked about was in the governance agreement, and it is around the discretionary budget of $10,000 to support the board community engagement activities. We might have this to be again recommended to subordinate slightly and maybe include community engagement, board professional development, and say board attendance at local government events and conferences. Getting them to go up to zone 5, etc. I think that we should be encouraging us to be learning, building connections, bringing back that knowledge here. So I just thought that fund, as you know, when I've got that fund out there, we haven't used much of it. And I think one of the reasons is it's quite narrowly defined. That like one, we're getting used to it actually having the ability to invest that money, but also I think the scope is quite narrow. So just looking at how we can just build that remit out for that fund. So that would have to go back to the policy, but it is reflected back in here specifically. So there's two aspects, the policy being dated and then it being reflected in here that community engagement is one part, a major part, but one part not so development and split government, conference, whatever.
Would you limit it to local?
We're just talking about a professional development,
Okay.
to be honest.
Okay, if we can have a order, whatever is going to work there, it is comes out of your Niall's budget, so we'll take a lead, but the intention is there is just to give a slightly more scope to invest.
And that was the last bit, was approved.
Within that budget though, or?
Yeah.
So maybe just highlight the policy, so for next week when someone comes in and sees the document reflects that reflects the understanding. Now, those are the two things I don't know. You use some more specific.
They were around the level of.
We talked about
And
or service trade-offs with that, but we're comfortable with the level service trade-off. I think we.
Yeah, it was under parking. The parking's topical at the moment, right? Because we're thinking of implementing payments and so on. So what does, to get the parking section, what does implement payment mean? And what does fund payment option mean?
Page 8, parking, that was bottom 2. Sure.
very clear, but
No, it's not.
I suspect that it means that you have put in checklists, that you will have the ability to actually make some things around how much parking costs. Yeah. But those would be things that you would anticipate you would be probably engaged on anyway.
Yeah, it'd just be nice to clarify what those two lines mean, and whether we need 2 lines and whether it can be really just in the Thanks, Hayes.
team, I'm just looking through Kathy's notes that she sent me. I think we've covered those. Was there other things that we discussed? Georgia, was there anything else that you had down from our meeting before that we needed to raise?
Those two things I've said, yeah, you can just double check that. I don't think there's anything else.
Yes.
I think we have a pretty good session on that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. This is just, but it does say that this is brought to the new board and the new training and but a lot of the heavy lifting has been done, as you can tell from the red marks there. Anything else, Dean?
Yeah, I think I was, we're in a community environment space, including the community board is also wondering if there when there are opportunities to coordinate those meetings by chance, it's not to say all the time, just it feels like we could better utilize that bridge. And I think it's the same way I get things from council and the community.
Probably not a delegation matter. It might be a legitimate thing to raise, and I think that probably if you had a conversation with your GM, and sort of work through how some efficiencies could be done there, and how you might combine. I don't think there'd be any issue.
But the community will give the invites to the meeting, as also councillors do. We could just do that, and we could try and co-locate here with board meetings.
But I'm not leaning, like, I don't know,
Okay.
showing the intention.
Okay,
Like, that's not.
Well, that's an easy action actually, instead of thinking would, frankly, have a look at the invites, but maybe that one is a good one.
Yeah.
To see what the business is.
I mean, then broken enough the community would be able to set forth some priorities, so then contextualize that in our team. So the community environments committee, a lot of the committee work is going to be talking around funding, social infrastructure and strategy and stuff. I think that is still relevant to the board priorities. And like I said, it can be some things, can be having a bit of conversation inside of that room. Only right in this, we had to say sometimes, but I thought you guys know that too.
I'd also just share that I've had eyes on the and council seen yet day, but it was the I thought about this when I was looking at the delegations again. I think it's a really nice example of how it works. And congratulations to you is when you actually raise your priorities. Council through labelling process. And I'm looking at the CD draft, and top two is one of the community priority projects. And where they all are. So I think that's been a really nice process, and hopefully when you do get to see the draft shortly, delivery, that's giving you exactly the kind of I guess profile within the statutory documents that you should have. That is the whole outcome that is being seen through the government commission and yourself. So that's quite a nice outcome.
Look, this is these two documents, this agreement in terms of really matured. I think it was a historically before this term, it's just been a rollover thing. I think we've really looked at these and taken these seriously now. So, and the fact that we're only having to refine this very mildly now shows that we're in a good space. Just for your background too, John, today we talked about how we can use our planning and strategy HUI, so our informal fly meetings, how we then use the workshops, and then how we use the board meetings more effectively to advocate initiatives and to be sort of more proactive. And we do say that the workshop is a really great forum. Staff take it really seriously now. They've been really well prepared. It's very collaborative and constructive. So we really see that sort of almost like the beating heart of the community board is those workshops, and being very diligent about, because they are quite full, George will say, we know we're now pushing to July or something like that, just making sure that the workshop items reflect the board's priority as well as where the staff needs are. So I think there's a really nice way that we're using the workshops to be, rather than just be presented to actually having real constructive conversations. That's the intention here. It's not just a exchange. As with parking this morning, it was a lot. It is communities. Yes. So enhance the strategy. Anything else, team? We don't need to fill the time needed. Anything else? All good. Thank you, team. Look forward to that coming. So the plan now is you'll make some modifications. We don't need another meeting. You'll just circulate it. This is where we come to. We'll read that LTO.
Well, it'll come as a paper to you.
Well, if you want to send Steve anything just in advance of that, around the LTO, feel free to do that. Otherwise, it's the upcoming. So. Cheers, Dave. Okay, so thanks, everyone. Would you like to do the closing kind of here?
Kia whakare te tāpū kia wātia ai te ara, kia tūru ki whakatapa ai, kia tūru ki whakatapa ai. Humi e, tai.